So, what if the reason we are so spectacularly, losing the fight against climate change is because we have fundamentally misdiagnosed who the patient actually is?
Oh, that is quite the opening question to start us off. But I mean, it gets right to the heart of the human ego, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a huge blind spot.
We just have this almost inescapable tendency to center ourselves as the main character in literally every story, even, the story of our own potential ecological collapse.
Right, yeah, the whole main character syndrome thing.
Exactly.
And honestly, that ego is exactly what we're going to challenge today. So, to you, the learner, welcome back. We are thrilled you've carved out some time for another custom tailored deep dive.
Yes, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Today, we have a piece of source material in front of us that is incredibly brief, but it packs a philosophical punch that completely upends that main character syndrome we just mentioned.
Yeah, the brevity is actually what makes it so striking, I think. We are looking at an excerpt from a piece titled The Doctor of the Earth, Healing Through Nature.
Catchy title for sure.
Right. And it originally aired on a channel called Natural Wellness at 25th hour of a day.
Okay, before we even get into the actual text, that channel name alone, 25th hour of a day, that is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Oh, absolutely. It really sets a mood.
What do you make of that framing, the 25th hour?
Well, to me, it implies this profound state of temporal scarcity. Like the 24th hour is the final deadline, right? It's midnight.
The clock has run out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So operating in the 25th hour suggests we've already pushed past the natural limits of our allotted time. We're essentially operating on borrowed time.
Oh, I see.
Or perhaps we're being forced to find time and solutions that don't traditionally exist, because the standard operating procedures have just completely failed us at this point.
Wow, yeah, it really sets a tone of urgent reflection. And the excerpt itself, it takes maybe 90 seconds to read, but it demands a radical shift in our perspective.
A total paradigm shift.
Right. It asks us to stop viewing ourselves as the, quote, saviors of the earth and start realizing we are actually the patients of the earth.
Which is such a wild pivot. The entire piece is constructed around this really powerful, extended medical metaphor.
A medical metaphor. Walk me through how it sets that up.
Well, it uses the framework of modern medicine to diagnose our environmental crisis,
Mm.
and then, it prescribes a cure. It sounds straightforward, but it forces a complete reevaluation of the power dynamics between humanity and nature.
Okay, let's get right into that power dynamic because the source opens with a premise that literally anyone who has ever been sick can relate to.
Yeah, we've all been there.
It says, we trust doctors because we believe they will help restore our health when we are sick. And then it says, we follow their advice, take the prescribed treatment, and patiently wait for recovery.
Right. Standard medical protocol.
Exactly. And then it hits us with this incredible pivot. It says, in the same way, we should trust nature.
It's a brilliant psychological trap, honestly.
Trap? How so?
Because for the last, 50 years, the mainstream environmentalist narrative has been framed around a totally different dynamic. Just think about the big campaigns from the 80s and 90s.
Ah, yeah, I remember those.
The messaging was always, save the planet, right? And the imagery was usually this fragile, passive, dying globe resting gently in the palms of a pair of human hands.
Yes. The ultimate savior complex. It painted the planet as this helpless victim.
Exactly. A victim that desperately needed human beings who were apparently these powerful, capable guardians to swoop in and rescue it.
Right, and that narrative fed the human ego perfectly. It told us we were the ultimate arbiters of the planet's fate, like we were in charge of the whole operation.
But this text just strips that away entirely. It completely flips the script.
How does it reframe it?
Well, it doesn't frame humans as the capable guardians saving a passive planet. It frames nature as the active, capable, incredibly experienced physician.
Oh, wow.
And humans.
We are the sick, confused patients lying in the hospital bed, completely dependent on the doctor's expertise. Going from being the superhero of the story to being the vulnerable patient in the drafty hospital gown, that is a massive blow to the ego.
It really is. You essentially have to surrender control.
Right, because when you are the patient, you don't get to dictate the terms of the hospital. You are subjected to a system that, quite frankly, understands your biology way better than you do.
Surrendering control is the key phrase there. I think it demands a totally different kind of responsibility from us.
What kind of responsibility?
Think about it. When you are the savior, you make the rules. You decide what gets saved and how. But when you are the patient, your primary responsibility is just compliance.
Compliance, that makes total sense.
You have to follow the doctor's orders, even when they are uncomfortable or inconvenient.
Which actually makes me think about a really specific dynamic in medicine. Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy.
Let's hear it.
Let's say a patient goes to the doctor with severe cardiovascular disease, right? And it's been caused by decades of a terrible diet and literally no movement.
Okay, a very common scenario, sadly.
Right. So the doctor prescribes a medication to help manage the blood pressure, but the patient goes home, takes the pill, and then just continues eating fast food for every meal and never getting off the couch.
Well, that medicine is going to fail.
Exactly. The underlying habits are still actively destroying the biological system. The pill can't outwork the lifestyle.
Ah, the classic non-compliant patient. It is one of the most persistent frustrations in the medical field, actually.
I can imagine.
You can give someone the absolute perfect treatment protocol, but if they outright refuse to change the environmental factors that caused the illness in the first place, the intervention is basically useless.
Okay, so applying that directly to the text we're reading today, are we essentially acting as a global population of non-compliant patients?
That is a really interesting way to phrase it.
Because it seems like we want the clean water, we want the breathable air, we want the stable weather systems, which the text identifies as the prescribed treatment, right?
Yes, the ideal outcomes.
But we are completely ignoring the doctor's advice regarding balance and limits while simultaneously looking around and wondering why the planet's health keeps deteriorating. We're eating the fast food and wondering why our heart hurts.
That maps perfectly onto our current situation. We absolutely want the cure, but we refuse to alter the lifestyle that induced the sickness.
Right.
We want all the benefits of a balanced biosphere without actively participating in the reciprocity that maintains it. It's a very one-sided relationship right now.
Well, on that note, there is one specific instruction the text gives regarding this whole treatment process that I actually want to challenge a bit.
Oh, what part?
It says we must, quote, patiently wait for recovery. I have to say, I have a real problem with the word patiently here.
Really? Why is that?
Because, we don't have time to be patient. Every major climate model, every piece of ecological research out there is telling us that we have a rapidly closing window.
That is true. The urgency is real.
We literally have a climate clock ticking down to 0 before we hit these irreversible tipping points. So, if the house is actively on fire, how can a text prescribe patience? It feels almost dangerously passive.
That is a very fair critique. It really is.
Yeah.
But I think we need to distinguish between emergency triage and actual systemic recovery.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the difference?
If your house is on fire, yes, you desperately need the fire department to put it out immediately. You don't patiently wait for the fire to stop. That is triage.
Right, the emergency response.
But once the fire is actually out, you cannot rebuild the foundation, the framing, and the roof overnight. That requires a totally different timeline.
Okay, I see the distinction. So the text is talking about the rebuilding phase, not the putting out the fire phase.
Exactly. And I think it's deeply critiquing our modern technological hubris.
Hubris.
Yeah, we are a society completely obsessed with the quick fix. Think about it. If an app takes 3 seconds to load on our phones, we abandon it. We get annoyed.
True. I'm definitely guilty of that.
We want a technological silver bullet that will just, pull all the carbon out of the atmosphere by next Tuesday so we can go back to normal.
We want a software update for the climate crisis.
Exactly. But the text is asserting that true, deep systemic healing operates on biological time, not digital time.
Biological time versus digital time. That is a really helpful way to frame it. Let's break down the mechanics of that, actually. What does biological time really look like in a healing context?
Well, think about a severe physical trauma, like a fractured femur. When a bone breaks, the doctor sets it in a cast. That is the emergency intervention.
Right, setting the bone so it's straight.
But the doctor isn't actually healing the bone themselves. The healing relies on these tiny cells called osteoblasts.
Osteoblasts.
Yeah, they're specialized bone-forming cells. And they have to physically migrate to the site of the fracture and then secrete a matrix of minerals to form new bone tissue. Literally cell by microscopic cell.
Oh, wow. And you definitely can't speed that up with a software update.
No, you cannot. You cannot yell at an osteoblast to work faster.
Right.
You cannot throw venture capital funding at a broken bone and expect it to magically fuse overnight. It just doesn't work that way.
You just have to wait.
You have to set the optimal conditions for healing, protect the site of the injury from further stress, and then, yes, you have to patiently wait. Nature operates on that exact same cellular biological timeline.
That makes a lot of sense when you put it like that.
Like, you can stop clear-cutting a forest today, which is the triage, but the complex mycelial networks in the soil, the fungi that connect all the root systems, they take decades to naturally regenerate.
So we have to respect the physical limits of biological regeneration. We can't just hack our way out of it.
Exactly. We have to be patient.
So if nature is the doctor and we are the patients needing to accept this long-term biological recovery, the next logical step in any medical journey is to, well, look at the chart. We need to examine the symptoms of our planetary illness.
Right into the diagnosis.
Hmm.
And the source material provides a very stark, very clinical diagnostic rundown of those symptoms.
It really does. It lists the specific compounding environmental problems. It points explicitly to air pollution, extreme heat, droughts, floods, and climate change.
A pretty grim list.
It is. And then it identifies the root cause of these ailments without any hesitation whatsoever. It says, quote, because we have taken more from nature than we have given back.
If we look closely at how the author structured that diagnosis, there's a very deliberate progression occurring there.
A progression. I didn't catch that. Walk me through it. How are droughts and floods linked to a systemic issue?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it moves from the localized to the systemic.
Mm-hmm.
The text lists highly localized visceral events first.
Like the floods and the heat.
Exactly. A flood is something you watch destroy your own neighborhood. Extreme heat is something you feel physically on your skin when you step outside.
Right. They're immediate and tangible.
These are localized symptoms. But then it culminates with climate change, which is a vast, invisible, systemic condition. This is exactly how a medical professional explains an autoimmune disorder to a patient, actually.
Oh, that's interesting. They don't just drop the heavy systemic diagnosis on you without context, right?
Right. A doctor will say, the severe joint pain you are experiencing in your wrist, the unexplained fever you had last week, the persistent rash on your arm, these are not random disconnected issues.
They are all related.
They are interconnected, localized manifestations of a much larger systemic autoimmune failure. The text is doing the exact same thing with the Earth. The flood isn't just bad weather. The extreme heat isn't just a tough summer.
They are physiological responses. It's almost like it's the planet's fever.
That is the perfect term for it, fever. Because in human biology, there is a concept called homeostasis.
Homeostasis. I remember that from high school biology, but refresh my memory.
It's that delicate internal balancing act a body maintains to stay alive, regulating temperature, your blood pH, your hydration levels, all of it.
Right, keeping everything in the Goldilocks zone.
Exactly. When a virus enters your body, your immune system intentionally raises your core temperature to create a hostile environment for the invader. A fever is a mechanism of homeostasis, trying desperately to correct an imbalance.
So you're saying the extreme weather events, like the heat domes we keep seeing, or those massive atmospheric rivers causing catastrophic floods, that is the Earth's homeostatic machinery malfunctioning under immense stress.
Yes, essentially. The system is desperately trying to redistribute excess heat and energy, and it results in these violent, localized symptoms. The Earth is trying to correct the imbalance we created.
Okay, I understand the symptom progression now, but let's look at the root cause the text provides. It claims this is all happening, quote, because we have taken more from nature than we have given back.
The ecological deficit.
Right. I understand what they're getting at, but honestly, treating the complex global biosphere like an overdrawn checking account feels a bit simplistic to me. Does treating the environment like an overdrawn bank account oversimplify the issue, or is that exactly the kind of blunt, easily understood metric we need to conceptualize the damage?
It's an interesting critique. I mean, is an overdrawn bank account a perfect scientific model for atmospheric thermodynamics or ocean acidification? No, of course not.
Right, it's not a direct scientific parallel.
Ecology is about incredibly complex webs of interdependence, not double-entry bookkeeping. However, as a diagnostic communication tool for a general audience, it is remarkably effective because it clearly illustrates the concept of an ecological deficit.
Okay, let's unpack that term. How does an ecological deficit actually function in the real world?
Well, let's stick with the financial analogy for just a moment because it actually helps clarify the biology. Think about natural resources in terms of principle and interest.
Okay, principle and interest. I'm with you.
For thousands of years of human history, humanity lived roughly off the biological interest of the planet.
Meaning what, exactly?
We harvested timber, we caught fish, we drew water, but we generally did so at a rate where the Earth's natural regeneration cycles could replenish what we took within a reasonable time frame. The principle remained intact.
Got it. So the system could handle the withdrawal because the deposit rate matched it. The bank account stayed balanced.
Exactly. But with the advent of the Industrial Revolution and then accelerating exponentially over the last century, we fundamentally altered that behavior.
We started taking way more.
We started digging up fossil fuels, pumping out deep, ancient aquifers that took millennia to fill, and clear-cutting massive old-growth forests. We stopped living off the interest and began massively drawing down the Earth's biological principle.
We basically acted like trust fund kids who found the combination to the vault and just started spending wildly, assuming the pile of gold inside was literally infinite.
That is a very visceral way to picture it, but it's totally accurate. The text is pointing to a fundamental breaking of a biological contract.
A biological contract.
Yes, we operated under this arrogant assumption that the Earth's resources were infinite, and equally dangerously, that its capacity to absorb our waste, our carbon, our plastics, our pollutants, was also limitless.
Which it obviously isn't. So the symptoms, the text lists, the air pollution, the droughts, the extreme heat, that is essentially the planet's immune system breaking down under the sheer physical strain of that over-extraction.
Exactly.
The body is collapsing because the deficit has reached a critical threshold.
And returning to the medical framework of the text, when a patient presents in the emergency room with a severe, life-threatening deficit, say critical dehydration and advanced malnutrition, the doctor doesn't just stand there admiring the complexity of the failing organs.
No, they have to do something immediately.
Right. They have to establish an immediate treatment plan. They have to intervene to balance the scales before it's too late.
Which brings us to the most surprising part of the text, honestly. The mechanics of the prescription.
Yes, the cure.
Because after diagnosing this catastrophic, systemic, global failure, the text gets incredibly specific. It states, without any ambiguity, that one of the simplest and most powerful ways to do this is by planting more trees.
I will admit, the first time you read that line, it sounds almost entirely naive.
It totally does. If I go to the doctor with multiple organ failure, a fever of 105, and a systemic infection, and the doctor hands me a glass of tap water and a single chewable vitamin, I'm going to immediately ask for a second opinion.
You probably sue for malpractice.
Exactly. When faced with global floods, mega droughts, and the literal collapse of the climate system, prescribing a tree feels wildly out of scale with the problem. It feels like bringing a squirt gun to a forest fire.
It feels that way because we severely misunderstand the technology of a tree.
The technology of a tree.
Yes, the text doesn't just say plant a tree and hope for the best. It explicitly outlines the physiological functions of this prescription.
Right, it gives us a whole list.
It tells us, quote, trees provide us with oxygen, clean the air we breathe, reduce pollution, lower temperatures, conserve water, and support countless forms of life.
When you lay all of those functions out side by side, it is a pretty staggering list of capabilities.
It really is. If we analyze the functions presented in the text, we can categorize the tree's medical mechanisms into two distinct powerful systems. I refer to them as the generators and the filters, or shields.
Okay, generators and shields. Let's break those down. Walk me through the generators first. How is a tree actively generating health for the planet?
The generators are the life-giving positive output functions. The text specifically highlights providing oxygen and supporting countless forms of life.
Okay, providing oxygen, that's basic photosynthesis.
Exactly. On a biological level, the tree is acting like a massive planetary ventilator. Through the complex chemical process of photosynthesis, it's literally taking sunlight and water and breathing life into the system, generating the fundamental molecule, oxygen, required for almost all complex biological activity on Earth.
That's incredible when you think about it on a global scale. And what about the supporting life aspect? Because we usually just think of, like, birds sitting in nests.
It goes so much deeper than just birds and nests. A single mature oak tree, for example, is a keystone species.
Keystone meaning it holds everything else together.
Yes. It isn't just a piece of wood. It is a bustling biological metropolis. It supports hundreds of specific species of caterpillars and insects.
Wow, hundreds, just one tree.
Just one, which in turn feed the local bird populations, which in turn support the larger predators in the ecosystem. And below ground, its roots are partnered with those intricate mycorrhizal fungal networks we mentioned earlier that share nutrients across the entire forest floor. The tree generates a sprawling web of biodiversity simply by existing.
Okay, so that is the generator side. It's pumping out life. What about the filters and shields?
These are the protective mitigating functions. The text lists cleaning the air, reducing pollution, lowering temperatures, conserving water, and protecting the soil, alongside absorbing harmful carbon dioxide.
I really want to pause on lowering temperatures because the text mentions extreme heat as a primary symptom, right?
Yes, the Earth's fever.
How exactly is a tree acting as a localized air conditioner? I mean, I know shade feels cooler, obviously, but is there an active mechanism there beyond just blocking the sun?
There is a massive active mechanism, and it's called transpiration. It is fascinating physics.
Transpiration. Okay, how does that work?
Trees essentially sweat.
Wait, they sweat like humans do to cool down when we work out?
Very similar principle, actually. Trees pull liquid water up from the soil, deep underground, through their root systems. That water travels all the way up the trunk and out through microscopic pores on the leaves called stomata.
Stomata. Okay, I remember that term.
When that liquid water reaches the surface of the leaf and turns into water vapor in the atmosphere, it undergoes a phase change.
Right, goes from a liquid to a gas.
And in physics, changing water from a liquid to a gas requires a significant amount of thermal energy.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So as the water evaporates from the leaves, it actively absorbs heat from the surrounding air. This physical process, combined with the albedo effect of the canopy reflecting solar radiation away from the ground, physically cools the microclimate around the tree.
That is mind-blowing.
It isn't just blocking the sun, it is actively refrigerating the air.
An organic, solar-powered air conditioner. That is wild. Okay, what about conserving water and protecting soil? Because I always assumed big trees just drank all the groundwater and dried out the soil.
It's actually the exact opposite. When rain hits a paved city street or a barren, clear-cut field, it flashes off instantly, causing runoff and massive flooding, which, again, was one of the symptoms the text diagnosed.
Right, the localized symptom.
But a tree acts as a massive hydraulic buffer. Its leaves break the kinetic energy of the falling rain, slowing it down before it hits the dirt. And below ground, its roots break up hard, compacted dirt, creating what we call preferential flow paths.
Preferential flow paths, what are those?
Essentially, they are microscopic tunnels in the dirt. Instead of the water just running off the surface and causing a flood, the root system acts like a giant sponge, allowing the rainwater to percolate deep down into the earth, recharging the underground aquifers.
Oh, wow. So it actually stores the water for later.
Exactly.
Huh.
And simultaneously, those same roots are binding the topsoil together, physically holding the earth in place to prevent the hemorrhaging of erosion during heavy storms.
Let's step back for a second and just look at this complete picture. Look at that list again.
It's impressive.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. A single tree is addressing almost every single systemic symptom diagnosed in the previous section.
Every single one.
Extreme heat. The tree actively lowers temperatures through transpiration, floods and droughts. The tree's root system conserves water and anchors the soil. Air pollution and systemic climate change. The tree physically traps airborne particulate matter on its leaves and aggressively absorbs carbon dioxide to build its trunk.
It is multitasking on a physiological scale that human engineering cannot even begin to replicate.
It really is like the ultimate planetary multivitamin. It's an all-in-one, incredibly elegant organic technology that addresses multiple distinct catastrophic symptoms all at the exact same time.
Elegant is the perfect word to use here. In the sciences, an elegant solution is one that solves a highly complex problem with maximum simplicity and efficiency. But this raises an important question, actually.
What's that?
It highlights a deeply ingrained societal bias we have. We vastly undervalue these complex, life-saving ecological services simply because they happen passively, quietly, and slowly in the background.
What do you mean by our bias against passive services?
Think about it this way. If a major tech company out of Silicon Valley held a massive press conference tomorrow and announced they'd invented a machine that could simultaneously capture ambient carbon, produce pure oxygen, filter microscopic airborne toxins, actively cool the surrounding microclimate, retain groundwater to prevent flooding, and prevent topsoil erosion.
And it runs entirely on renewable solar energy, and it can literally build perfect copies of itself using local dirt and water.
Exactly. If a human engineer built that, it would be hailed as the single greatest technological achievement in the history of our species.
Oh, without a doubt.
The inventors would be given Nobel Prizes immediately. Governments would pour trillions of dollars into manufacturing them and deploying them globally. But because this breathtaking technology comes wrapped in the humble, silent package of a tiny acorn, we ignore it. We just chop it down to make room for a wider highway or other parking lot.
We are just so biased toward noisy mechanical interventions.
We really are.
Building a massive, humming steel carbon capture facility feels like we are doing something about the crisis. Protecting a silent forest feels like doing nothing, even though the forest is infinitely more efficient and provides a dozen secondary survival benefits the steel machine does not.
The text is forcing us to confront that exact arrogance. But beyond the mechanics, I think there is a psychological brilliance to prescribing a tree for a global crisis.
How so? Like, why focus on the tree psychologically?
Well, when you read the latest IPCC report on global climate change, or you watch drone footage of apocalyptic floods on the evening news, the natural human psychological response is paralysis.
Yeah, you just freeze up.
You feel incredibly small. The scale of the global carbon market, the melting of the ice sheets, it's just too vast to comprehend. It induces massive eco-anxiety and learned helplessness. You think, I am just one normal person. I cannot possibly alter the trajectory of the global climate system. So you do nothing.
Because what difference could you possibly make?
Exactly. But this text scales the macro crisis down to a micro action. Plant a tree. I can't regulate international shipping emissions, but I can physically dig a hole in the dirt, place a sapling inside, and water it.
That is a really profound point.
It takes the abstract, paralyzing terror of the planetary diagnosis
Yeah.
and hands the patient a clear, actionable, highly localized task.
It is a masterful way to overcome that learned helplessness. It gives you agency again.
Yes, agency is crucial for recovery.
But the text is also careful not to present planting a tree as some magical overnight cure, right? Understanding the profound, multi-layered utility of this organic prescription leads directly to how the text asks us, as individuals, to administer it moving forward.
Right. Because planting the tree isn't the end of the medical protocol, it's just the intake appointment.
So let's look at the final section. The source text transitions into a very sober reality check. It states, quote, "Every tree planted is an investment in a healthier future." And then it offers this caveat. We cannot prevent every environmental danger overnight, but together we can make a difference, one tree at a time.
And it concludes with a three-part directive that I find really fascinating. It says, plant a tree, protect a tree, nurture nature.
Let's look closely at that three-pronged directive because it outlines a complete life cycle of medical care.
It really does. Plant is merely the initiation. It is the immediate intervention, the swallowing of the pill, so to speak.
Yeah.
But if you stop there, the treatment will likely fail.
Right, because planting a million saplings doesn't matter if they all dry up and die in a month, which is why the second word is protect.
Yes, protect acknowledges vulnerability. It admits that the biological cure is fragile in its early stages and that there are opposing forces like urban sprawl, commercial logging, or even the extreme weather we've caused that actively threaten the healing process.
It's like in medicine, you don't just take an antibiotic and then immediately go lick a dirty hospital floor.
No, you definitely shouldn't do that.
You have to actively defend the healing process while the body recovers.
Exactly. You have to guard the patient. And then we get to the third directive, nurture.
Nurture. This is the one that really caught my attention.
Why is that?
Well, nurturing isn't a defensive posture like protecting, right? And it isn't a one-time event like planting. Nurturing requires an ongoing reciprocal relationship.
It is the daily work of recovery. It requires attention to the soil quality, ensuring adequate water during a dry spell, monitoring the leaves for disease. It implies a long-term commitment to the patient's well-being.
I really appreciate that the text acknowledges we cannot prevent every environmental danger overnight.
It's very grounded.
Because so much modern marketing around problem solving promises instant, frictionless results. Buy this product, solve your problem today, have this surgery, be better tomorrow.
Right, the overnight success myth.
But this text is looking the patient straight in the eye and saying, look, the disease has progressed to a severe stage. We are starting treatment immediately, but you are still going to feel some serious symptoms tomorrow. The planetary fever is not breaking tonight.
It is grounding the intervention in temporal realism. And honestly, this is where human psychology clashes most violently with the required treatment.
Oh, for sure.
Because healing a global biosphere requires deep, multi-generational foresight. And from an evolutionary standpoint, human beings are terrible at generational foresight.
We really are. We are biologically wired to respond to the tiger jumping out of the bushes right now, or, the food source available today.
Exactly. Our brains prioritize immediate threats and immediate rewards. We are just not evolved to naturally prioritize a slow-moving benefit that will manifest 50 years after we are dead.
So what does this all mean for us? This is where I want to push back a little bit on the text's call to action.
Okay, let's hear the pushback.
It focuses on this phrase, investment in a healthier future. If the primary beneficiaries of this treatment, the cooling shade of a massive canopy, the fully functioning carbon sink, the mature root system holding back a flood, if those benefits are mostly going to be enjoyed by future generations, how do we reconcile that with the urgency of the text?
That is the big question.
The text says, let us act today. But how do you convince a species obsessed with instant gratification to invest massive energy into a reward they might not live to see fully realized? From a purely selfish, short-term economic standpoint, why should I bother planting a tree I will never sit under?
That is the ultimate philosophical hurdle presented by the text. And to clear it, we have to undergo a profound expansion of our definition of self.
Our definition of self, what do you mean?
Well, if your concept of self ends strictly at the boundaries of your own physical skin, and the timeline of your life ends after you're roughly 80 years on this planet, then you are right. Planting a slow-growing tree makes absolutely no rational sense. It is a terrible return on your immediate investment.
Right, I put in the work, someone else gets the shade.
Exactly. So how does the text ask us to redefine the self to overcome that?
Well, it relies on a cyclical thesis, doesn't it? The text states, when we care for nature, nature cares for us.
Yes. It is asking us to expand the definition of us across time.
Across time, that's heavy.
It asks us to view humanity not as a collection of isolated, competing individuals currently alive today, but as a continuous flowing organism extending backward into the past and forward into the deep future.
I see where you're going with this. If humanity is a continuum, then planting a tree isn't a purely altruistic, sacrificial act for total strangers in the future?
No, it's not. It is an act of self-preservation.
Self-preservation for the extended body.
Yes. It is preventative health care administered to the extended body of humanity that will exist tomorrow.
You know, there is a proverb, I've seen it attributed to a few different ancient cultures, that says, society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in.
I love that proverb.
This source text is essentially taking that poetic proverb and codifying it into a strict medical imperative for survival.
And it links beautifully back to the final phrase of the text. Trust nature to protect our future.
Right.
You have to trust the physician's prescribed treatment protocol enough to know that the cure will work.
Right.
Even if you, the individual patient, are discharged from the hospital or from life itself before the final grand results are fully realized.
It fundamentally changes how you view the physical world around you.
It really does.
Because once you understand the deep physiological mechanics of this prescription, the transpiration, the root hydrology, the oxygen generation, you can literally never look at a local park or a sprawling forest the exact same way again. It transforms from being just pretty scenery into being a critical care facility holding the entire biosphere together.
Exactly. And for you, the listener, we really hope diving into this short but potent source material has provided a bit of a mental reset.
Yes, a much-needed reset.
Because the goal here isn't to add another layer of heavy, paralyzing dread regarding global ecological collapse.
Quite the opposite, actually. By shifting the paradigm from the arrogant burden of we must save the fragile Earth to the humbling realization of we just need to follow the Earth's proven medical advice, the emotional weight shifts entirely.
It moves us from feeling overwhelmed by a global crisis we don't know how to engineer our way out of, to feeling empowered by a clear, localized, and highly actionable healthcare plan.
Right. You don't have to invent a miraculous technological cure for climate change.
No, the doctor already spent millions of years perfecting it. You just have to administer it, one tree at a time.
The pressure is completely off us to be the genius inventors. We just need to stop being non-compliant and start being good, observant patients.
Well said.
Before we wrap up our time together today, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on everything we've unpacked about this doctor-patient dynamic.
Okay, let's hear it.
We started this deep dive talking about the sterile, highly precise, engineered environment of a modern hospital room. But if we truly internalized the premise of the Doctor of the Earth, and we fundamentally accepted nature as our primary care physician, how would that physically alter the blueprint of human society?
That is a massive question.
Right. Would we stop looking at the parks, the tree-lined streets, and the green spaces in our urban planning as mere decorations or real estate afterthought?
Like they're just window dressing.
Exactly. Would we instead start zoning, funding, and revering them as the hospitals, the pharmacies, and the critical life support systems of our shared future?
Hmm. That really changes how you look at a city plan.
Think about the biological machinery working silently to keep you alive the next time you walk past a tree. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.